I said before, I always like when films like do the narrative technique of establishing a pattern for the audience over and over, a repetitive thing, and then change it. And that change tells us everything. And I think y'all did that masterfully here because the idea of like these same routine shots over and 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 over, and it seems like the same, but then the little differences tells you everything, tells you the whole story is in the little differences. You know what I'm saying? So you establish this pattern of this, then this, then this, then this, and it's the same shot, the same dude, the same action, repetitive over and over and over. But then and then you see it again, same dude, the same dude, but then the differences, you see the like the little differences, and those differences tells you about what's going on. Like that's visual storytelling at its finest. And then also I really liked. I was going to shout out the sound design. The sound design, and that between that and the sound design tells the whole story. And this is an example of like sound is half of the story. Sound is half of the battle. Like sound is, if anything, like sound, like the idea that sound can fill in gaps. Um, filling gaps in the audience's mind, you know what I'm saying? And also the idea that like sound can make things different than what appear. Sound can make a shovel sound like a gunshot, you know what I'm saying? And by being intentional about your creative use of sound, you can create a whole different vibe, emotion, story with just the sound design. And I think that was done well here.
Madness is the best word I can use to describe the Burrow. Um, when I say madness, I specifically mean madness in the form of repetition. Um, just going through the daily routine of this guy over and over and over and over again. It creates a very maddening feeling, which I think is intentional because I imagine this is exactly how our protagonist is feeling due to the constant isolation. Um, and additionally, the only updates you ever get are updates to the audio, the sound, how things are sounding. And that also creates a maddening effect because it's the same sounds over and over and over. Uh, and it creates just, you want to hear something new, you want to hear something different, and there's no music, there's no change in tone, it's just the same eerie ambience for an hour and a half. And like I said, I think that was all intentional because it's trying to convey how he's feeling. You're supposed to feel how he is feeling. It was a very avant-garde approach to it, and it was very interesting. It was a very interesting film.
Felt like a lot like a David Lynch film, which I really enjoyed. But I think it pushed the boundaries of film even further. Like it completely left traditional narrative behind, and seemed to kind of find a whole new way of telling a cinematic story, which is just really cool. I think one part of that was its use of sound, because there's a really eerie, spine-tingling use of sound that creates a very palpable sense of atmosphere and location. You could really feel like the wind on your face, and the use of like screeching and screaming, quite nasty sounds, just made the whole thing feel really unsettling. And then there's the beautiful high contrast black and white photography, which again had a real texture to it. Felt like you could kind of reach out, put your hand into the world of the film. Just every aspect of the film just really came alive. Even though there's not that much going on, and it all just sort of combined into a really hypnotic effect. It does kind of feel like the film burrows into you.
Each scene must be essential, getting you from point A to point B. It was hard to focus and be all in on the story. I had to turn it on a few times. But I also get the sense that this director knew that, and he wanted us to burrow in and dig deeper into the story that he was trying to tell us. The standing long shot in the beginning of the film, where the lead carries the axe and fades as he walks over the hill towards the trees is cinematic beauty, really. I enjoy this man in solitude with an axe sort of vibe. Black and white suits the tone of this piece as it's not a modern take to modern day storytelling. The story has more of a traditional, abstract, experimental element, nods to the likes of filmmakers such as Lynch. It's a silent film with a heavy use of play, of sound design, and it has creative cinematography shots overall as well.
I loved the black and white. I thought it added a real interesting element to the video. I also loved that you got just these like clips of what was happening interspersed with just this like solid black, but the sound would continue. It made it feel really kind of clipped, and you were forced to really pay attention while something was playing, like while you were seeing something, because you knew that it was going to be interspersed, and it felt very like almost staccato, like a give and go, like start and stop, where you're like seeing this movement and you're like with it and the sounds are starting to make sense, and then you just have this black and this nothing, and I really, really loved it. I thought it added something so interesting. I also loved the way that they did the sound through the entire thing and how they worked it all together and kind of kept coming back to certain elements and bringing it back at the very end especially. I thought it kind of pulled focus and pulled it all together really nicely.
This reminded me of, like, it put me in mind of, like, what if, David Lynch shot the first half hour or so of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Um, it was, I thought, really striking imagery. Like, the black and white, I thought, worked really well for the piece. Um, I thought that it took a lot of courage to, do this piece with basically no dialogue whatsoever and just totally rely on visual storytelling the entire time. There were some really stunning shots in this, and that, by and large, I think it's really compelling and interesting.
Felt like it had a real Twilight Zone sort of feel, although I didn't really know exactly what the story was, why this guy was where he was, if it was all in his head, or it was a little abstract to me too at some points. So I wasn't really sure. It did feel very film noir in the beginning with the opening music and just the black and white, but it just had a really mysterious feel and kind of creepy with the sounds and the effects. It really tested my patience, this one, which I don't know if that was part of I felt like it was sort of an experimental film, and stylistic, just very stylistic to me. But I thought it was interesting. For me, it was a test of patience because it just felt like there were moments where the scenes, the individual moments this guy was having maybe went a little too long. Probably was part of the point of this. But, I think he himself was going crazy after a while. I'm not really sure why he was in this situation or what exactly the women meant. Maybe he did something to these women and maybe he was a murderer and that's what the graves were for. I really don't know. But it was interesting and I thought it was well done for what it was supposed to be, for the style and what it was presenting.